Why now is everyone talking about no deal when this was supposed to be the last option?
Well, I think the Prime Minister's finally come up with a plan. We saw that with Chequers 2 weeks ago and the White Paper, and it's obviously divided the Conservative Party. And I think at this point there's clearly a majority in Parliament for Brexit, but is there a majority for any particular deal? And on that basis, and I think the fact that the negotiations are stuck with this question of the backstop on Northern Ireland, that's the real reason why actually David Davis wasn't having many meetings with Barnier, because they're just stuck in the negotiations and we can't find a way through on Northern Ireland.
Right, so do you think now the planning has accelerated to an extent that we would be prepared for a no deal?
Well, I think no deal is not the outcome that anyone should be trying to aim for, but I think we do need to make serious plans for it because it is absolutely a possibility.
Right, who's actually in charge of no deal?
Well, I mean, Dominic Raab's technically in charge of no deal, but we hear that the Prime Minister is planning, and the Cabinet Office is planning to start prepping the British people for what no deal might look like. And that sounds to me like that could go down a sort of very controversial route. I think that there'll be leaders in her cabinet who won't want there to be sort of flying allegations of how terrifying a no-deal Brexit would be, because they want to keep that as part of the negotiating hand. So, yes, Britain is apparently stepping up preparations for no deal. There's an awful lot of work to do if they are going to prepare properly for it.
Right, what would it look like then?
Well, Leah Varadkar certainly says that what it would look like is planes not being able to fly over his territory.
Right, well, let's have a look at the Sun front page, because they don't pull their punches. I'll ban British planes as revenge for Brexit, says Leah Varadkar. He is then called an airhead on the front.
This is ridiculous. I mean, the fact is that there are real issues about aviation with Brexit that will have to be resolved if there's not a deal. But the idea that you ban overflight is crazy. This is something that is secured by a Chicago treaty that Ireland is a signatory of. I mean, you can fly over Iran, you can fly over Afghanistan. This is not kind of... I just think that this is an example of people losing the plot.
Is he losing the plot? Is it mad?
Well, I think there are clear consequences, either for the kind of proposal that Theresa May is trying to get through the Conservative Party in Parliament or trying to get through the European 27. There are also even bigger consequences for no deal. Look, it's a democratic failure we're witnessing now, where after 2 years of negotiations, the government has come up, the Conservative Party has come up with a choice of stabbing ourselves in one eye with Theresa May's Chequers car crash proposals, or stabbing ourselves in both eyes with no deal. That's a democratic failure, and the only way that can be resolved, when, as Henry says, there is no majority for either proposal in-house, is to have a people's vote, to hand this decision back to the British people. That's the only way to sort out this mess created by politicians.
Referendum. I mean, I understand the argument you're trying to make.
But not on a deal, but not on any proposal. We now have the proposals, we now have the evidence. We didn't know about £50 billion to do absolutely nothing but leave. We didn't know that the promises made about the NHS were not worth the paper or the red paper they were written in.
Both sides had the chance to make arguments, and we discussed at great length the economic consequences.
The British people didn't know about this. They have every right to demand that their democratic voice is heard on the final deal. And support for that is gathering in every corner of this country. It is the way out for people like you, who know, you just said, there's no majority in the House of Commons for any deal.
I think there's no majority at the moment, but if we get closer towards the end date, I think it is likely that people will come around and think, actually, the Chequers plan, if the EU would tango on it, is a sensible way forward. And actually that starts looking more attractive.
Right, isn't that the point, Tom Baldwin? I mean, you want a people's vote. The Labour Party won't come out and back a people's vote. In fact, the Shadow Foreign say, well, she's ruled it out for now. It's true. She hasn't ruled it out forever, but they're still holding firm, and you'd probably need their support.
79% of Labour members.
Well, Labour members, as you know, is slightly different.
Party now.
But don't you think it is a case at the last moment, at the 11th hour, the 11th minute before midnight, a deal will be done?
I think at the last moment what you're going to see is deadlock. You're going to see the failure of this government and the Conservative Party to get a deal through Parliament. In those circumstances, in that place of a constitutional crisis and a democratic failure, you will find people not supporting a people's vote necessarily out of the sort of principal position which I do, but because it's the only way out to sort out this mess.
All right, let's return, because Jessica, you were beginning to describe what the sort of repercussions of no deal would look like, what preparations are actually being made. Are we talking about stockpiling food? Are we talking about supplies being hoarded in case we can't get access to medicines?
I mean, I think one of the key things that I think that Ivan Rogers raised in a very good speech that he gave about why he believed that the UK wasn't seriously preparing for a no deal Brexit is one of the is things like regulating medicines or regulating environmental standards. He was saying these things are not being prepared for, and therefore, because they aren't being prepared for, and they would take many months to set up, it's quite clear that the UK has not yet really ramped up its preparations for it, and the government still believes, and I think this is probably the case in Downing Street, that a deal is going to be done that won't make this necessary.
Right, but do you think, on that basis, let's assume that there is a deal done at the last moment, that there does need to be some sort of proactive policy for managing food supply?
I think the government should be... This is exactly what Dominic Raab should be doing. We've taken far too long to actually get in train serious plans in case we don't come to a deal. In fact, I think it's quite unlikely that we get to the last minute and have no deal of any sort. I think by October, November, if it doesn't look like we're going to be able to reach an agreement, then we'll look at the clear, discrete areas that we can reach agreement on, perhaps aviation, for example, to resolve the problem I was referring to earlier. But I think we should also remember that no deal has huge consequences for the EU itself, right? This will blow an enormous hole in their budget, right? And the UK departing and not paying the money that Tom was referring to earlier, which would be the condition of us continuing to be a member, would be very difficult for them. The IMF just came out and said this would have a big hit on their growth. It's not brilliant across the Eurozone at the moment. Obviously this would be hard for the UK, and it's probably would be harder for the UK than the EU 27, but nonetheless this would be a big issue for them.